Sup elites, this is Elite 4 Walkthroughs, and welcome to week 6 of the IBL versus the Nerdy Steve and the Rhode Island Regis. You may have noticed a change in scenery. That is because this is going to be post-com, and there is a reason behind that. It is not because of poor video quality. The video turned out quite fine. It was just the matter of how the battle went. I really don't think I can hide the outcome of this battle, but as it goes, there were no hacks in this battle, none at all. It was all pretty fine. We started off pretty strong in this battle. It's just a matter of how the battle went. The reason I'm doing this post-com is because of two reasons, one of which is because of how long this battle was. It was a total of 51 turns, and the entire replay was about 20 minutes, so I had to double the speed of the replay just so I can get a faster play-by-play, because things that happen in this battle are pretty uninteresting, I would argue. A lot of the battle just stands on a lack of progress. It's just a bunch of repeating turns and just trying to get some progress. So I feel like I would have gotten a better project if I were just to do post-com. I also had to have a couple of hours just to, I guess, just a couple of hours just to calm down, because the way I behaved in this battle, where it was quite unprofessional of me. I'd rather not see people how I acted during live comm, but we're just gonna jump right into this battle. So the battle's gonna start, and we decide to lead off with Azulf, as he decides to lead off with 9-volt the Jolteon. I decided to go for a U-turn because if he was Scarf, we would know immediately, and if he was Specs, we could just go into Goodra, because Goodra was our answer for Jolteon. He goes for a Volt Switch, and even though that did absolutely nothing, we did figure out that it was Specs, as he goes into Heartless, and he finds out that we have a Choice Band. I kind of forgot about Frisk, and I was expecting a Will-O-Wisp, so I went into Zapdos, and he goes for an Ice Punch, which I also expected. Luckily I can take it. I go for Roost just because that gets rid of my Flying type, and I can take the Ice Punch a whole lot better. I do expect him to have Earthquake, so I go for a Volt Switch, and then I noticed that didn't do a lot of damage, and I calced that he has Assault Vest. So that means no Will-O-Wisp, no Pain Split, none of that, no Destiny Bond, so we can go right into Double Aid and take a hit. And I went for a Swords Dance this turn just because we could get some free damage off if we wanted to, but then he goes out into Infernape. And I decided to go into Torkoal, expecting him to go for a Firenium Z to possibly OHKO the Double Aid, as he does. Turns out this was Blast Burn. As we can see from the damage, even though this is Sun boosted, this still did a lot for a Torkoal, because if it were Flare Blitz, it would be a different story. We still live it, but we can't take a close combat or anything. He does withdraw as he goes into Latias. He was probably expecting me to set up my rocks, but I went for Protect just in case he wanted to go for a close combat. When it comes to Latias, he predicted me to switch, and this is where things kind of get hazy, because this Milotic is pure hell with Marvel Scale. I decided to knock off the Flame Orb just for residual damage. He goes for a Scald, which doesn't do too much because I am a Careful Natured Drapion, meant to wall Latias. But this Milotic here is pretty much the whole entire reason why I'm doing post-com, because this thing just sits here. He goes for Recover, and you're going to be seeing Recover a lot. Because I found out that he was bold, purely physically defensive, but I was calcing for Calm Natured, like max special defense Marvel Scale. So he just goes for another Scald. I go into Zapdos, and I expect him to go into Jolteon. So I just go for a Roost. He reveals that, or he goes into Dusknoir as I Roost up, and he finds out that I have a Charty Berry for Rockanium Z Infernape, and he goes right into Jolteon as I go for a Thunder Wave. That was something I didn't want to happen, but it was my best play, honestly. He goes for a Thunderbolt. I just decided to scout to see if he would Volt Switch or not, as I go for a Roost and get my health back up. And either he switches out this turn, or I can just go into Goodra and get a free Outrage off. So he just stays in and goes for a Thunderbolt. That doesn't do too much, and I get a free Outrage off. and it pretty much 2-hit KOs everything, even the Milotic if he wants to go into it. He just decides to sack off Heartless though. Gets a Shadow Sneak off for free damage. I'm gonna go for an Outrage, and we do get rid of the Dusknoir. It's not too much of a threat, honestly, but he goes right into this thing again, as I go for a... He just goes for Recover again. Again, he outspeeds me by 1 base speed, so that was kind of a waste on his part. But I do 2-hit KO it with Outrage. It's just a matter of getting him to stop recovering. I decided to go into Zapdos as he goes for another Recover. It's just a matter of stalling him at this point. And I decided, I forget, I believe I went into Torkoal just to get the Sun up as he goes for a Scald. I know I can take a Scald with the Sun up, and I can set up my rocks on this turn. I do have Solar Beam, but I'm not especially offensive. It could have done a lot to this thing had I realized it was fully physically defensive, but I decided to set up my rocks just for Infernape and Jolteon. It means nothing to Latias or Milotic. And at this point, I'm going to go into Azelf just to try and get some residual damage off. He goes for a Scald and gets the burn. It doesn't really matter to me. Now, Psyshock does absolutely nothing, and I wanted to go for a Thunderbolt, but I'm always scared of the Jolteon, so I go right in. He goes for another Recover, and I believe I went for a Thunderbolt this turn. Yes, I go for Thunderbolt, and Steve decides to make a miraculous play and goes for a Mirror Coat and gets rid of my Zapdos, which I had Mirror Coat in the back of my head. I didn't think he would click it that turn with how much I was trying to avoid it, but I thought Psyshock would be enough to kill it here. Clearly I was wrong. I was afraid to click Thunderbolt when Jolteon was in the back, and maybe he didn't know that I had Thunderbolt, to be fair. He was fearing Thunderbolt. So in hindsight, I could have probably gone for a Thunderbolt that turn and gotten rid of it. I don't know why he stayed in. If I had Psychic, that would have probably killed it, but I was prepping Psyshock for Snorlax. So I decided to sack off Torkoal as I go into Goodra and just get some hefty Outrages off, just to try and get this thing to waste its Recovers. Because with the Flame Orb, I can get rid of it in 2 hits. The problem is, it's just going to sit here and spam Recover, and the whole reason that I'm post-comming this is because the more and more he clicked Recover, the more and more angry I got, the more pissed off I got, because he spams it a lot. I don't blame him for doing it now. There are times where he does use Recover when he really shouldn't have and should just kill me. But I decided to just keep spamming Outrage until he decides to sack something off. He just keeps clicking Recover instead of deciding to switch out, and I hit myself in confusion right here, which kind of sucks. Because now he just gets a free switch out at full health, and he goes into Top Gun, and he's not Intimidate, so my Outrage is enough to get rid of it. And there he goes. And then he goes into Latias, which outspeeds me, and he can get rid of me with the Psyshock since I'm locked in. That does get rid of a heavy hitter for my Milotic. I'm a bit upset by that, but I do get a free switch into Doomsday, and he just decides to go for a Shadow Ball, probably predicting the Doublade switch in, but I have Pursuit, so pretty much this Latias is going to sit here until it dies. He goes for a Defog to get rid of my rocks, which particularly, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Getting this Latias out of the way is just some free damage. I was just spamming Pursuit just so that he doesn't get a free switch into Milotic, and we do get rid of the Latias, luckily. And I believe he just goes straight out into Milotic again, and this thing is just a nuisance now. Because right now I have Doublade, which gets Scald Burned, I have Medulla, which can't really touch anything with Jolteon in the back, and I just decide to... I'm burned now, so... And he's still at full health. All I can really do is click Poison Jab. I don't have Taunt, unfortunately, and I may be Careful Nature, but he still does a lot to me. I just decided to get it within Azelf Thunderbolt range, so I just decided to Poison Jab again, and he goes for Recover this turn. I don't understand why he clicked Recover that turn, because I was burned, there was no reason to do that. Doublade certainly doesn't hit this thing that hard. To me, it's just stalling out the timer. The more he clicked Recover, the more that the timer started to run out, and really, the more the timer started to run out, I was just starting to get pissy because Steve said he had to leave for work, and yet he's the one trying to stall me out. And there was a time where I felt like trying to stall out the Milotic, and I didn't want to. But here he goes for a Scald. I prayed not for a burn because I can set up a Swords Dance and 2-hit KO it with Sacred Sword if he doesn't get a burn on the second hit. Or I can get a Sacred Sword Shadow Sneak. And then he goes for a Haze. And that part right there, I think that was kind of what made me snap, because now he just gets another free recover. And Sacred Sword does absolutely nothing. I go for another Swords Dance. And I can go for another Sacred Sword if I felt like it. Because I believe I expected him to set up, because that does a lot, but Shadow Sneak isn't enough. And right here, despite the fact that I take a Sacred Sword, he just goes for another recover. And again, I don't understand why he's been doing this. I guess he's keeping it fresh for Azulf, but he's seeing how much Psyshock can do. If he was fearing Energy Ball, because he said he was fearing Energy Ball, but if there, I could have revealed it right then against him as I went for a Psyshock. And the fact that I didn't show it should have been a red flag that I didn't have it. So I don't know why he kept recovering. All that's left is Medulla at this point. I have to click Psyshock because Energy Ball's not going to be enough to get rid of the Specs Jolteon. He goes for a Scald. It crits me just to spit in my face. And at this turn, I just go for another Psyshock. And this is probably the last turn that gets me annoyed, because he uses his last recover at the most unreasonable time. Because I die in 2 turns. He can 1-0 me. He had no reason to go for a recover. And I just go for a Psyshock. He goes for a Mirror Coat instead of a Scald because fuck my life. And we lose 3-0 against Steven and his stall Lodic. And part of the problem here is that I was very salty. I still am, honestly. Just the fact that all of his recovers were used. I could understand him fearing a crit or Power Whip on Gudra. But the fact that I wasn't clicking Energy Ball on his Milotic, instead I was going for Psyshock, that should have been a sign that I didn't have it, and he had no reason to just spam recover on me. Especially on the Drapion, especially on the Double 8, it was just so annoying. And like, I don't hate Steve. We're good friends. I was really excited for this battle, and the fact that it ended off like this was pretty upsetting. A huge letdown, I would say. I don't blame him for recovering some of the time, but to do it that much, to waste all of his PP'd up recover, that gets on my nerves, because I loathe stall. It makes battles uninteresting. It makes the opponent you're doing it against very annoyed. That's why I don't try to run heavy stall like that, and it ended up killing 5 of my Mons, and then Latias just cleaned up Gudra. But Steve didn't play bad. He didn't. He did what he had to do. So good to him. I didn't play bad either, I don't think, outside of maybe forcefully clicking Thunderbolt on my Lodic because I didn't reveal it yet. But as it stands, we are currently 2-4. We fight Blue Jay on Toast next week, and we have to fight for playoffs at this point, because we finally hit the negatives in our differential, and after Blue we fight Deku and his Z-splashing Mimikyu again. So I don't think we're going to make it to playoffs, and at this point I really don't care. This season's been a bit rough. I'm not really happy with how I've been playing. I do like my draft, but it has holes in it that make it very difficult to use. So as it stands, I'm just going to end off the video. It's a bit upsetting that I don't have live commentary for this, but I think it would be best if I don't show my salt, because I was quite salty. This is probably the angriest I've ever been in a league battle. Even more than the Scrafty sweep or the high jump kick miss. And as it stands, I'm gonna get back on my feet. Hopefully. It still hurts a little bit to lose to heavy stall like that, but there's nothing I can do about it. So without further ado, I'm Elite for Walkthroughs. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to crunch the like button, subscribe if you already haven't. If you want to see Steve's side of the battle, it'll be in the description below. And show some spirit for the Washington Lake Spirits, because I am lacking a lot right now. See ya.